So the next thing that we'll take a look at are just some basic statistical definitions. Some of these will pop up in your multiple choice questions or even some of your short answer questions. But when we looked at the stats unit, we talked about a bunch of the definitions that go along with stats. So I just want to quickly review some of them. First section there is how do we actually get a sample and who are we talking about? And so the population is all of the individuals or items that belong to a group that's being studied. So for example, if you produced basketballs and you wanted to figure out, how many you did quality control and you want to know how many are good, you want to know the quality of all of the basketballs. Okay, so your population is all basketballs that you would manufacture. The sample, however, is a small group of individuals or items that are representative of the population. So if I'm Nike and I produce 1,000,000 basketballs a year, I'm not going to be able to test every single basketball. It would just be far too time consuming and expensive. So instead of testing 1,000,000 basketballs, I'm going to choose 500 basketballs in some manner. I could choose them at random or every 200th basketball or whatever it was. Okay, and so a sample is a small group that represents the total population that you're interested in. A census, however, is a sample on steroids, as it were. A census is where you are really interested in knowing the opinions or the ideas or the condition of every single member of that population. And so every single individual or group from the population is surveyed. And that's why a census is a little different. A census is incredibly thorough. It's very accurate relative to a sample, but a census is very expensive and takes a very long time to do. The next thing that we talked about was different sampling techniques. And so we looked at 6 main sampling techniques. And so we looked first off at cluster. And in cluster technique, every member of a randomly selected subgroup is selected. So for example, if you did a school, the school population, all the students are broken down into different homerooms. And so you randomly selected maybe 3 homerooms, and every single person in that homeroom would have to do your sample, would have to do your survey. Okay, that's a cluster. Convenience is a sample that's chosen because it's easy. So let's say I want to find out how people's holiday was. I would simply stand at the door of the cafeteria and I'd ask the first 10 people that walked in. And those would be my sample. Okay. Simple random, each member of a group has an even chance of being selected. So if I take the population of WO and I say I've got, let's say 1,200 students, and I want to select 50 people at random, I just randomly pick 50 people without consideration as to how those people were selected, just 50 people. Stratified random, similar to cluster. In stratified random, the population divided into subgroups, and members are chosen randomly from that group. So let's say, again, subgroups in a school would be like homerooms. So let's say there's 30 homerooms or 40 homerooms, and I want to randomly select 5 people in each homeroom to do my survey. Okay, so I'm going to pick every homeroom, 5 people have to do them. Okay. Systematic, a list of the population is made and every blank member is selected. So let's say I've got 1,200 people and I want to select every 15th person to do my survey. So I get a printout of the school student list and I just pick every 15th name on the list and I count down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You're the winner. Then just keep counting down, 16 to 30, 30th person is the winner, then the 45th person, then the 60th person, then the 75th person, and so on. Okay. Voluntary response is people can choose whether or not they want to respond to a survey or not. Okay, so this is typically what you would see done like through a radio call-in show or on an internet website where you can respond to the survey or choose not to. It's entirely up to you. And then finally, we looked at different types of bias, and there's 3 types of bias that we talked about. Again, bias is ways of skewing the information or making the information slightly inaccurate, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So the first type of bias we looked at was response bias, and that's like your leading question. So it tries to get the person to choose a specific answer that you are hoping for. A non-response bias is that your sample group does not actually reflect the population that you're interested in. Okay, so if I was interested in the TV viewing habits of 5-year-olds, it doesn't necessarily make sense for me to ask their grandparents when I could very easily ask the 5-year-olds themselves. And the last one is measurement bias. And measurement bias is that either I've limited your choices, I highlight something incorrectly, or my data collection method is flawed. So the way that I'm measuring is somehow defective. Okay, so those are the definitions that we talked about over the course of that particular unit on statistics.